Right. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Developing an Accessibility Framework. I'm Shannon Urban. This is Megan McGowan. She's going to kick us off today walking through our agenda, and we'll just get started.
Okay. All right, perfect. So just to give you an idea of what we will cover today, we're going to start out with an introduction, just a brief kind of beginning, why make things accessible? It's always good to start there. And how things were at McGraw-Hill before we had a good accessibility framework, and also creating the framework, what the steps were to create one, examples of what ours looks like. And then we will end with a workshop and have some time for questions and answers. Up on the screen is a QR code. And so if you either want to use that QR code or copy the tiny URL, the password AccessU-2025 with a capital A, capital U for AccessU. And if you want to just go there, you can download the files for the slide deck and for the handout. And if anyone wants this at any point, we have a QR code, and this can float around if people need it. So feel free to come up. All right, please. All right. To give a little background on McGraw-Hill, we are a publisher. We have textbooks. We also provide digital materials, some being an ebook in EPUB form. We have PDFs, online assessments, videos, the things, anyways. And we are specifically with the school business unit. So we deal with K through 12 education as opposed to, higher ed. And we have many portfolios at McGraw-Hill. And so subjects include literacy, social studies, science, math, etc.
A little bit more introduction to who I am. I'm Shannon Urban. I'm the Accessibility Director for McGraw-Hill School. So essentially, my job is to provide that strategic vision and how are we going to achieve all of the things that we need to achieve. And then I lead a team of amazing accessibility professionals who are boots on the ground doing the hard work. Let's see, I engage cross-functionally. We work with, oh my goodness, I think on the engineering side, it's about 40 different Agile teams working on all unique parts of the platform. Some are working on assessment, some are working on interactive widgets, some are working on just the course experience. So there's a whole lot of teams over there that we connect with. And then on the authoring content side, we have instructional designers, content authors, product designers, and a bunch more. So we're always connecting with all of those groups. And then, something fun about me, I was a music teacher for 12 years, and then I changed careers. And I do play all of the instruments of the concert band and a couple of string ones, but I'm not good at those. And I did audition for the Chicago Symphony, failed miserably. It was a day like today, and I was nervous. So it was really sweaty. I played flute and piccolo, and it just slid right off right in the middle of the audition. So there went that, but it was fun. I got to actually stand on the Chicago Symphony stage and play a little bit, so. I
am Megan McGowan. So I am Shannon's underling. I am an accessibility content specialist, if you want an official name. But basically, I write guidelines, I provide trainings on how to create accessible contents. So this includes digital courses where, whatever it is, I don't know, high school physics, and it'll have all those, materials there. So I write guidelines that include stuff like assessment, forms, media, EPUBs. I'm sorry, it says pubs. Anyways, PDFs and other documents. Yep, I review manuscripts and prototypes from teams. I answer questions, that kind of stuff. Something fun, I keep a box with 4 pairs of ears. I'm really into Renaissance Festival, and they're elf ears. And I need more because, okay, so the wood elf ears tend to curve upward. I really want moon elf ears that kind of curve downward like that anyways, and I don't have them. I only have one good set of ears. The others is my husband's. And then I got two. My mom got it some weird cheap thing and they're awful. I would not wear those. But anyways, I just thought that was silly and kind of funny. And who doesn't want to have pointy elf ears? Well, probably most sane people in the world. I'm not one of them. All right. So if we want to go over some learning outcomes today, we hope that at the end of this session, people here will understand the key components of a successful accessibility framework. Basically, strategy for organization, how to do accessibility, whatever. We're calling it a framework. Meh, okay. And then also learn how to identify and address gaps and challenges in your organization. And then finally, that we're hoping that during this session, we can begin to outline your own accessibility framework for your organization and what steps you would like to take next. All right, so to begin, we just have a few questions. And how ready are you to build this framework or improve upon an existing framework? So, who here has engaged in an accessibility audit? Feel free to raise hands or clap or whatever.
And put it in the chat for those of you online.
Awesome. It looks like roughly a fifth of the people here raise their hands. I'm not the best at estimating, so if it's not a fifth, it's probably not. Okay, anyways. And then who here has an accessibility policy? So not an accessibility statement, but a policy at the organization of you better do this, people. Woohoo! That's exciting. I say roughly a third of people maybe raise their hand.
Amazing, actually. I'm really happy to see that. Awesome.
So great. So many of you are a lot further along than many organizations. I guess these are people who are attending an accessibility conference.
Wait, you kidding me?
That was odd. Okay. And then do people with disabilities participate in the design or evaluation of your products or services?
Clap those hands, put it in the chat.
Oh, I
Nice.
that was that like a quarter?
Wait, worse than you.
Okay, fair enough. A quarter of the people raised their hands. So that is so fantastic because we always want to include and work with people with disabilities because, well, do I have to give a because? I feel like that's obvious. I'm moving
This group
on.
gets it.
Okay, got it. Okay, here we go. All right. And then 4, do you have a dedicated team responsible for accessibility at your organization? Ooh,
Not bad.
it looks like
Sort of back there.
ish. Wonderful. Man, you guys are so far ahead of the before stage that I'm presenting about. So you're like, old hat. Anyways.
See maybe what they went through too to
Yes.
get to where they are.
And we'll share ideas and, I don't know, make the world better. I don't know. Sorry, that sounded lame to say that, but it's really important. And then next thing, what is this isn't a show of hands. What is the biggest challenge to building an accessibility program?
If you have thoughts,
question.
grab the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually accessible for all different types of disabilities, because something that might be accessible for blind people isn't accessible for someone else, with the motor disability.
Oh, true.
Hi, Randy here. I think organizational buy-in can be an issue, and I don't just think that can be a beginning statement because you have leadership changes and stuff like that. So it can fluctuate. It can be kind of a brownie in motion sort of thing.
So the biggest challenge in my agency is to energize people to do accessibility. We know the how to, but we don't know how to encourage people and energize them to do it.
getting the budget to actually have an accessibility team?
Budget, yes.
These are all great points you're bringing up and very real challenges. And there's not a single challenge mentioned that I was like, oh, like, yes, have felt those. So anyways,
You know, we may have a mature program, but it's still always growing and always running into new unique challenges.
All right.
Obviously, this group, why accessibility, you know, it's because you need to begin at the heart of things. But from a business side, since we're here for organizational strategy, some of the things that your leadership is going to be looking for you to speak about confidently, clearly, articulately is the legal landscape. I usually leave legal to last because to me that is not at all the most important piece. It is just like, okay, all the other things didn't sway you, you got to do it. It's the law. You know, it's my last piece. But you need to know the law to be able to speak to it. You need to understand your customers, whoever your audience is, whatever you're building for whomever, you need to understand their needs and their challenges and their barriers and what they're really looking for. And sometimes getting to the heart of that is not easy. Sometimes they don't always articulate it clearly. They say they want X, Y, and Z, but when you really dig into the root of it, it's actually something slightly different that will get them to X, Y, and Z. Leadership, we heard about getting leadership buy-in and that leadership tends to change. So you always have to be ready as an accessibility professional to defend your program, defend your stance, defend whatever else you have going on in your accessibility program. Always be ready. Always be up to date on the latest market trends, which is the next one, so that you can, again, speak confidently when they're like, why? Why should we keep you? Why should we let you grow? And you can have that demonstrable, this is what's happening in the market. This is the legal landscape. This is what our customers want. And oh, by the way, we've actually helped you get business this year. We've helped you maintain renewals that you otherwise might not have because accessibility has suddenly become important to that customer. So having that data at your fingertips, in the back of your mind at all times is really important. And Megan, I was going to ask if you could take this one. Obviously, it's the human responsibility. That's where we usually start.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and granted, speaking to a room like this, we can begin here. Doesn't work for everyone, but ideally, and my favorite people with whom to work would be those that they really care about the moral part of this, that it is the right thing to do, to not discriminate against people, to make sure, and you know, for us, we're an education company. Like education, we want that to be accessible to everyone. And you know, like I like to think of, like, my background is in physics, and so I like to think of, you know, Stephen Hawking. And I mean, yes, his disability came a bit later in life and the effect on him, but there are so many brilliant minds, and physics without Stephen Hawking would not be as wonderful of a place. I mean, still great, but you know.
And one of the analogies I'd heard once, which I thought was kind of funny, was imagine if you were building a curriculum that only supported the jocks, the football players, the basketball players, the baseball players. They're the only ones who got that really good curriculum, and everybody else, you get whatever's left over. It's the same. You would never do that. So you're going to possibly hear, hey, their accessibility is such a small percentage. It's not, by the way. You all know that. So have that stat in your back pocket as well. But right, and many undeclared. But you want to, you know, use analogies like that to say, would you discriminate against this group or that group? No. So you can't do it against those with disabilities.
Yes. And I honestly forget how community has a different meaning there, other than we are all humans and let's support each other.
Right. Like, so when you think about in education, right, you have a student and you got this brand new curriculum. It's a digital ebook. Oh, that's so cool. It's not accessible, but oh, there's NIMAS files, which if you in education, you know, that's what you send off to have them create Braille or large print or audiobooks. Sometimes that can take months to get that to that student. So they're no longer part of the community in that classroom. They're now separate. They're no longer alongside at the same pace as everybody else in that classroom. So it is our job to ensure that doesn't happen.
And if you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend just researching universal design. Yes.
Y'all probably know it.
Cool. So I'm going to talk some about what the state of accessibility was like at McGraw-Hill before Shannon, AKA before the framework. It's kind of
It's the
same
framework.
thing. Okay. Anyways, so I inherited the kind of only accessibility role at McGraw-Hill K-12 for all McGraw-Hill K-12 products. So we had someone in charge of, yeah. So foundation, yes, I just want to make sure I go in the same order as there. Okay. So I was the one person there, but on the bright side, there was an acknowledged need for accessibility in the organization. I don't mean to say that everyone loved the idea and wanted to do it, but people had heard of the word accessibility and knew, oh yeah, we should do that if it's convenient, but we should do that. So, that's a better starting place than sometimes you get. Anyways, however, there was no cohesive structure or strategy, which was challenging. There were some other coworkers who had roles focused in accessibility kind of scattered throughout the company at McGraw-Hill, some in higher ed, some in platform. I was the only one in the school group. And previously, we had a K-12 product manager, an accessibility product manager. She ran monthly meetings. Erin Evans, phenomenal, if anyone knows her. And so she really started getting accessibility rolling at McGraw-Hill. She left the company. We had no one for a month. And then they hired me on. I switched from editing physics textbooks to accessibility. And I didn't have a director role or a manager title. I was what my role is now. So basically, I was the only accessibility person with no authority. Yay. But still, we did things. So one of the largest accomplishments I did at the beginning stage is that I took, we had some existing guidelines kind of scattered everywhere, resources all over. I began by consolidating all of the resources we had, giving a central hub where people could find this information. Because back when I attended accessibility ambassadors as a physics person, I would not know where to go even to find the things because it just wasn't very organized. So I used organization. This screenshot shows how the website was before Shannon joined McGraw-Hill, where I created a separate library for all guidelines, a library for audits, ACR, operations, training, kind of defined what each thing was in case people didn't know, key resources, stuff like that. Made sure that everyone in the company already had access to this site. So that is an accomplishment there. And then I expanded upon the guidelines, wrote some more. I continued those monthly ambassador meetings. And at the beginning, I was helping interpret some audit reports, and I was continuing to educate myself as I was in this role. Next. But I had no authority. I'm trying to do a face like the really cute pug dog with the glassy beady eyes. Anyways, all right. So was I convincing, Shannon? Okay, good. Okay, but yeah, I didn't have, so there wasn't any accessibility real focus in K-12. I didn't have an accessibility-based reporting structure. So who would I go to up the ladder when I didn't have the authority to do something? I could not require any changes. So I was the person who came to the meetings and would give information on, to make this accessible, here are the things you can do. And they went, can't wait till she leaves, because they didn't have to listen to me. No one wants to do extra work anyways. And when I started, requested if we could get into JIRA for our audits, but instead they said, no, you're not allowed. And I didn't have the weight to push for it. So we were using Excel spreadsheets on SharePoint. It was a horrible nightmare. I did the best I could with, it was bad anyways. And there was zero budget. So, well, I guess my salary was the only budget for accessibility. And yeah. Okay. And then it was a struggle to influence others. I had transitioned from a previous role, an editorial role. This made it very difficult for me to talk with designers. When I gave feedback about CSS or HTML, if I noticed, okay, if we tweak this, oh, look, it fixes this. There was resistance. It was at the point that when I would speak up in a meeting, eye rolls, I could see the eye rolls over Zoom, and it was very challenging because how do I do this? But how dare you tell me how to code? I am the expert. Anyways, that was kind of what I was getting, and it was hard to influence others. So I learned about this method. You've maybe heard of it before as a feedback sandwich. So we have an image here where we have a burger, and there's a bun on the top and bottom, and those are both positive things. And then in the middle, whatever your fillings may be, hopefully as beautiful as this burger, because look at all those colors. Anyways, negative. So begin with positive, negative, end with positive. And so I learned which individuals, it was very important that I stroke their egos a lot before saying anything, because if I didn't do that, nothing would get done. And it's not pleasant doing that, but at the same time, I'm doing this for the disability community. And anyways, okay. Lastly, there were some operational barriers. I was working with many product teams, so all the different subjects, you know, from preschool to 12th grade, and I didn't have any support from project management. Every team, editorial, design, whatever, had a project manager. I requested, can I have a project manager, or at least someone part-time? Nope. Inconsistent tools and software, for example, what is still the case at McGraw-Hill, not everyone uses the same instant messaging software. Wow, isn't that a great way to talk to each other? Anyways, okay, there we go. And there were no fixed schedules, communication. Each team did things a little differently. I'm trying to work with everyone. And so organizationally, it was a large challenge for me. But alas, if we move on, creating the framework. All right, where do we start with trying to create a framework? Shannon is going to go over this because when she joined McGraw-Hill, this is what she started working on. She will go over 4 steps that it started with analysis, engagement, actually building the framework, and then implementing the framework.
And I will say, before I dive into those 4 pieces and kind of walk through what our framework actually looks like and what we've been able to accomplish, it was all partly because of Megan's insistence and her constant pushing for the need for more, for budget, for people. Otherwise, why would they have even hired me and brought me on? So kudos to Megan, and kudos to McGraw for recognizing that she's right. You know, we can't expect this one person with no authority to get everything done that we need done. So we need to hire in somebody who will have that authority. So that's really important. And if you don't have that backing, it does make it hard to move forward. But go ahead. So step 1, when I came in, was just to figure out what's the lay of the land. I needed to know where are we and what do we need? Just the bare minimum basics. And so I did a lot of listening tours. I met with individuals, I met with teams, I sent out surveys, I did a whole bunch of different things to gather internal information. If you want to switch to the next slide. So I gathered from the leadership, why'd you hire me? What do you need from me in this role? What is your goal for me at this role? And then I would say, okay, well, what staffing and tools are available today? The tools, again, it was a mishmash. What knowledge and training already exists? And what level of knowledge do all of these teams have? And that came from those listening tours and the surveys, like how this team over here, they're pretty solid. They get it. This team over here has never heard of the word accessibility and they're completely clueless. And so that presents its own unique set of challenges when you're working with all of them. How do we level the playing field so that they're all starting from a good spot? And then, of course, where's our products? So we mentioned in the beginning that we have multiple portfolios. Within the math portfolio, there's multiple programs. Within science, there's multiple programs. And so where are each one of those in their compliance? We didn't have the answer. It looked like some audits had been attempted, but they didn't know how to pull a representative sample of material to be audited, at least not in full. So if you think about a program, a curriculum that's digital from somebody like McGraw-Hill, it's humongous. It's thousands and thousands of things. And so you can't obviously audit all of those. So you pull a representative sample, everything that's a unique experience or a unique item type or something along those lines. That wasn't done. So the audits we had were incomplete. They didn't really give the full picture of compliance, but that was information I needed to know so I would know where to start. So I did that internal analysis, and then I went further to the external side. And I talked to sales, and I talked to marketing, and I talked to our bids and contracts and proposal people. And I said, all right, what's happening with our requests for proposals? Can you pull a list of the last 12 months of RFPs, requests for proposals, which is districts or states saying, we want to compare you to 3 other curriculum to decide who we're going to buy, and how many of those had accessibility as a requirement? And what specifically were they asking about? Were they just said generally, are you accessible? Or did they get in detail? So I pulled those stats. Same thing with win-loss data. Did we win or lose deals in part due to accessibility? Yes or no? Sometimes we didn't have that data because they didn't know to pay attention to it. Now they do. I have way more data now than I did almost 3 years ago when I started, but I did have some. Customer support tickets went to the support team. All right, how many tickets in the last 12 months had accessibility in some form or another as the issue that they were reporting, or even as a part of a list of issues they were reporting? And I pulled all that together. I already knew my market trends and my laws, and I pulled that all together to decide what my next steps were going to be. And just to kind of show you some of the examples of what I got from all of that analyzing and talking, in the internal side, we learned guidelines are created and shared. Woohoo! Megan created guidelines. She's sharing them out regularly. The process for doing that was terrible, right? Because people were sending her Teams messages and sending her emails and quickly calling her. And people on Slack in the engineering world didn't even know she existed. And so it was not always done easily, but at least the guidelines were there. They existed. And she also she gathered up a whole bunch of links to external trainings and put them on a place that everybody could access. It said, if you want external training or self-paced courses, go here. And the other big thing I noticed just by doing those listening tours, everybody really did want to do the right thing. They understood it's important. They didn't know what to do. And a lot of them felt like they also kind of had their hands tied behind their backs because they didn't have the authority. The schedule had already been decided. The budget had already been decided. Accessibility wasn't originally part of that conversation. So what do we do now? And so that was interesting to know. They really did want to. They just didn't feel they could. And so what wasn't working, I mentioned it earlier, widely varying levels of knowledge. So we need to kind of get everybody on the same level playing field. No support to get things done. Like I said, things had already been decided. That plays into the strategy that I'm going to show you later. Unclear expectations cross-functionally. I mentioned there's 40 Agile teams. And then if you go on the content authoring side, let's take science. There's a team dedicated to just K through 5. Another team dedicated just to 6 through 8. Another team dedicated just to 9 through 12. Within those teams, there's instructional designers, there's content authors, there's product designers, and none of them talk. So just understanding from a cross-functional perspective for just science, K through 12, how are we going to get in alignment? There were some technical technological restrictions as well. Our platform has come a long way because they did decide to start really prioritizing accessibility. It's amazing now, but there were some restrictions that had to be overcome on that side. And that sometimes would result in a constantly changing target as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the publishing world, but a lot of things are driven by adoption states. And if an adoption changes from here or there, then suddenly this program's no longer as important as that program, or not important, but not prioritized. So we have to switch gears, and that team that we just trained up, got to go do it over with Steve instead. So lots of those changing targets, and they had not done any user testing with people with disabilities at all. So that was a big negative. They wanted to, again, they knew they should, but how? How do we find, how do we recruit, how do we get people in? So those were big challenges that we had to overcome. On the external side, with the RFPs, the win-loss, the customer support tickets, what I noticed was a trend towards the first two letters of POUR, perceivable, operable, understandable, robust, which we all know. Perceive was number one. I need my alt text. I need my captions. The page has no structure. It makes no sense, right? That was number one. Number two was, I need to use it with my keyboard. Like when we say operable, that was the only thing they mentioned, keyboard. This is what we need. And it was interesting because a lot of our engineers didn't realize that when you're using keyboard, if you're not using a screen reader, versus using a keyboard when you are using a screen reader, it's a different experience. You do different things. And that was not well known. So that was another gap in knowledge. Whew. Okay, and then also we were learning that there was, sorry, it's very warm in here. We were learning that there was more stringent legislation coming down the pike. So I have a whole page dedicated to state laws because Maryland and Illinois and Texas and Colorado, but then also individual districts, Seattle and LAUSD, and the list goes on. They're all writing up their own requirements, either as a state law or just as a district requirement that goes above and beyond the federal guidelines. So had to be aware of that so we knew which states we were even able to be able to sell in. Yes. Oh, wait, you need the mic. I kept track of states for sure, and then I kept track of districts if it came to us. Like if a district came to us, then I would note it down like, okay, Seattle always. Yes, I have it all in a table. Yep. Sure. So all of this to say, and that's not a direct quote, but that's kind of a summary quote, that what all of our customer-facing teams were hearing is that non-compliance is now a deal breaker. So get your act together. Yes.
Hi, sorry. I had a question too. It was on a couple of slides ago, but I wasn't sure if we were doing
Oh,
question
yeah,
hour
sure,
when-
go ahead.
I was curious about the external trainings that you all offer, if you have tracking mechanisms and like how you're doing that.
We didn't before. Right now, we did just get access to DQ University for the entire company,
Oh, awesome.
and we are able to track who's taking what when.
Mhm.
Before that, it was just kind of, on your honor.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So
Yes.
next, I'm talking about what Shannon did, but here we go. All right. Engaging with people because gathering more information is needed. So as Shannon explained, she started out with a very thorough analysis about where we were. But then the question comes, now where do we go next? Next slide, please. All right. So with that, talking with internal coworkers, with leadership, first, understand what are the business goals and the priorities, and then align accessibility work with those goals and priorities. Generally speaking, if you speak the same language that someone already knows and cares about, you will get across much better. And then next, as Shannon worked with engineers, let's begin by analyzing what is this knowledge gap and then gather information about some challenges they were facing with technology and resources.
And I want to jump in on the knowledge gap. So it's not just, oh, we don't know how ARIA works, but, or like we know what ARIA is, but we don't know how it works. But it was diving in much deeper. Like, do they know all of the various ARIA roles? Do they know when and when not to use those ARIA roles and instead of using semantic HTML? So it was a lot more digging into the not just, we're unsure about ARIA, but exactly what about ARIA is confusing you. It was getting to the heart of the issue.
Next, talking with content developers. Again, all right, what is the knowledge gap here? And then to, talk with others to understand challenges they're facing with the tools, schedules, funding. So for example, we did not have any accessible graphing tool. And so that was a huge pain point in the science department. We want to give a digital graphing tool to our users, but now we can't because it's not accessible. Wait, what? Now we're making it worse for everyone. And there was a lot of frustration there because of some of, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. So, and then with ambassadors, so that group that I was kind of leading with monthly meetings. So ideally, we would have someone from each team attend ambassadors. And they would kind of be a liaison, I don't know, anyways, of information. As I would share, they could share with their teams, or they could share pain points, whatever.
We dove into that more to see, what do you want to get out of these ambassador groups, right? We know that they exist. This is one of the pros of the analysis, but what can make it better? And so one of the things that Megan and her cohort Craig did was turn it more into a workshop experience in many cases. So this is the topic of the month. And here's some samples that we're going to work through and give that introduction, go into virtual breakout rooms because we're all remote, work together, and then come back and share. And now then, challenge them to go out and share with the rest of their functional teams what they learned.
And I'll mention here that one of the things that is like Shannon was doing this and we were able to grow our team, she mentioned, our coworker Craig, who is the kind of design counterpart to me. And even though Craig can speak to accessible content, I can speak to accessible design. We have our area of specialty, and he helped establish so much credibility because
Listen to both Craig and Megan when they have design suggestions.
Craig.
They are Craigan because I always say their names too fast, and I'm like, Craig, so they became Craigan.
All right. And then also Shannon with external engagement. So talking with accessibility professionals to move forward. Conferences like this. Wow, you're already doing one of the things. Oh my goodness. Check off that box. Here, create a box on your paper, then check it off. Even though, anyways, that's what I do. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Sorry about that. And then online forums, podcasts, engage, gather information, learn from others. And also with the disability community, working with people from Schools for the Blind, Schools for the Deaf. Again, conferences that helps build more of, people, and user research.
We've actually created what we call the Ally Alliance, which is a monthly group of individuals who are either teachers of the visually impaired, teachers of students who are deaf, or there's a variety of people in there. I can't remember all of them. But they meet every month, and we show them things that we're working on, or challenges or blockers that we're hitting up against. Like for right now, we just had one that Megan was hosting, which was about early literacy challenges with audio teaching phonemes, and how do we do that with the deaf community. And so we learned some really cool things about that. So that has opened up the door to more user research. We did user research at the Abacus Bee, which it was in Iowa. It was like a spelling bee for math, if you're not aware, with all of the students who are blind or visually impaired used an abacus. It was really cool. And we had some new math e-tools that we thought were accessible. So we did the user research. 2 were good, 1 was not, but that's good to know. All right, so I've gathered all the data that I could gather. And I continue to do that to this day. I always gather more data every single month, year, whatever. And we've talked about in a perfect world, blue sky it for me. What would we love to see? And then let's step back from the blue sky and what can we achieve in this time frame, in that time frame? And all of that led to building out what I call the framework. You don't have to use the word framework. It's what I use. And I'm going to show you that framework and kind of what that looks like. So here it is, my beautiful framework. No. So it has 6 primary components. And the first one we asked about in the very beginning of the session, do you have a policy rather than a statement? And so if you don't, you need one. The policy is critical because that's where you point anybody to who gives you resistance, because that has been approved up the chain. This is our standard. This is our source of truth. This is what we are doing. And you don't get to say no. Yes.
What would you say to those of us who have leadership that might be resistant of policy versus statement, and how would you help I don't want to use the word coerce, but help.
We can coerce. No.
What would you say to those of us that have leadership that isn't fully on board,
Mhm.
unfortunately?
Yeah, like I said before, use analogies of other populations, first of all, that they would, think about why would you not do this for this other scenario?
Okay.
But also ask them if they have any other policies. Do we have terms of service? Do we have contract policies for procuring a third-party whatever integration? I don't know. But ask them if they have contracts and policies for other things in their organization. And if they do, there's really no excuse not to do it for this either. And at least that gets them thinking like, oh, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective.
Okay.
And it's a first step at least.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I think a great example is glasses, because if you have impaired vision, many people use glasses for that. What if we decided to take away glasses from all employees at McGraw-Hill? Wait, that's not okay? So I think that is one that can help kind of get that.
Just kind of frame it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
when we get resistance like that, a lot of, they're not fully on board, a lot of times is they just don't understand how pervasive this really is. They think it's this tiny little percentage of people that we're trying to build this massive thing for, and it's not true.
That makes sense. I liked the analogy of the athletes as well. I
Mhm.
work for a university, and that pulls a lot of money.
Yes.
So it would make sense to kind of, why would you make curriculum fully for one population, but
Yes.
not for everyone in the room?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
And money does speak.
Yes.
So that's where that win-loss and that RFP analysis, like you are literally losing business, or you cannot bid on this contract because you're not fully accessible and they require it. You're losing business. So that definitely speaks to leaders. Yes.
And you could get sued. So
There's
that
the
speaks
legal.
as well.
Yep.
People are sued all
I always leave that last, but yes, if nothing else works, you say, all right, well, here's the federal law. Here's the state law that we live in. Good luck. Yes, we do. Absolutely. So the policy, I'm going to get into like the difference between a policy and statement in just a minute, but that's the first component of the framework. Then we have governance, which I'm going to talk about each one of these in detail, so I won't get into it too much right now. We have training, which we talked about, leveling up, getting everybody on the same playing field, process improvements, accountability, and the metrics to prove success. So these were the 6 components that I identified as necessary to build a framework to grow a program. Without these 6 things being accounted for, our program was going to not be as successful. Your framework might look a little bit different, but this is the one that we did. So what's a policy versus a statement? The policy is a very formal internal requirement.
This way a little, so you're in the camera better.
Oh, there's a camera? Okay.
Perfect.
I don't know.
I
Okay.
just realized it.
All right. And it outlines your commitments, it outlines your goals, thank you, and your approach to how are you going to grow this program? How are you going to meet those federal guidelines, those state guidelines? How are you going to make your customers happy? And then it's a guide for your internal teams, and I'm going to show mine in just a minute. It sets standards, and it is your single source of truth. The statement, on the other hand, just one moment, the statement is public facing typically. So whereas the policy is internal, the statement is public facing, and it's more aspirational. It's, we aspire to meet this standard and we're working really hard, but there's no detail. There's no meat behind it, right? It's just fluff. So the policy is where the meat lives. Yes, go ahead.
Stop me if you're going to get to this, but it sounds like there might have had to have been some harmonization because you've got different states that may or may not have different rules, stuff like that. Is that true? And if you're going to get there, just tell me to wait and get there. That's something that
It
crossed my
is
mind.
true that different states have different requirements. And so if we, like I said, we're a publishing company, we are very adoption year based. So if we know we're having a literacy adoption in 2025, for example, I don't know if that was one or not, but then we're going to be focused on our accessibility on the literacy as a higher priority than math, which isn't getting adopted into another state until 2027. So we had to make kind of trade-offs like that.
The state of Texas was actually instrumental
Yes.
to accessibility growing at McGraw-Hill. Texas is the first state to require that all materials be fully accessible for both students and teachers. And if it was not, then you could not, the state wouldn't give any funding for any schools to purchase your publishing materials. And so then McGraw-Hill went, Texas is big. Yes, that helped.
And we got there, and we got our ACR for both the platform and K-12 content with full supports across the board. So yay. Now we know full supports is just compliance. It's not full usability. And we know that there are some areas where we can improve that overall experience, but we're compliant at least. All right, so next slide is just a couple of screenshots. We're actually going to show the real policy itself, but I wrote the policy in our Confluence because that's what people used, and it just goes through our general statement. In other words, who does this apply to? Because I actually had people say, oh, well, that's just for core reading and math, but I'm an intervention product, so I don't need to do this. No, yes, you do. So it was confirming that it's required for everybody. What is our mission? What is our vision? What is our framework? How are we going to get there? And a whole lot more. And Megan's trying to pull up our actual policy. No, I think it has to be on this screen.
Oh, thought it was, and it is not. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're moving screens. Hang tight. There it is. So you can see it's a rather long list, but I wanted to point out a couple of ones. Whoops, go up just a little bit. There's K-12 device initiatives. As you all know, there's the WebAIM survey. It comes out every year. It says JAWS is #1. Not in schools. Not in K-12. Chromebooks and iPads are #1 in schools. So that was an important distinction. Yeah, we may be building this perfectly for somebody on a Windows desktop using JAWS. What about if they're on a Chromebook using Chromevox? How are we doing? So we had some details about the device initiatives, and then scrolling down, some exceptions, because we are a curriculum company. We have a lot of pedagogy that we have to adhere to. And just like I talked about earlier with early literacy and phonemes being taught with audio, how are we going to balance keeping solid pedagogy and assessing the right thing, yet also being accessible? And those are challenges that we still run into, but we're working through it. So I won't go through the whole thing, but that's the policy updated on a pretty regular basis. All right, governance. Governance is just who's doing what when. It's really establishing those roles and responsibilities, because it's one thing to say, here's the policy and here's everything you need to do. But then they're going to be like, well, who's doing it? I'm not doing it. Is she doing it? He's not doing it. I don't know who's doing it. So establishing that governance, this group or this individual is responsible for this piece of the pie. And here's another and another and another. That took a long time. That took a lot of negotiation, a lot of collaboration. You will get pushback. You need to push through it. But it is so valuable in the end. And that pushback I got a year and a half ago, it's gone. Like, people are chomping at the bit. Now they're like, oh yeah, my team's going to be on top of that. Like, they really want to get in there because they understand and they've seen the value now. All right, and then create a training plan. So we identified gaps. We dove into those gaps of knowledge and understood exactly where the problems were as much as we possibly could. Now what? We can't have a policy to enforce. even though we know who's going to do the enforcing, if those people don't know how to enforce it. So we had to do the training plan. And we needed to figure out, how are we going to get materials? Are we going to write them ourselves? Are we going to take them from other sources out there in the wild? And how are we going to deliver them? Is it going to be bringing in a speaker or doing self-paced external classes? Or are we going to do internal trainings? Or are we going to do bite-sized chunks? And Megan is going to show us a little bit more about what we did decide to do.
All right, so just a couple examples. For guidelines, we ended up consolidating all of those into an EPUB that is quite long.
Talk about why we consolidated those into one handbook.
Yes. So previously, I had them all as separate, accessible Word documents.
100-page Word documents.
Well, not 50.
They were very long.
Some were, yes.
Yes.
Anyway, as you can see, consolidated, I have 200 pages, but this would be more than 200 pages of what you would print. There is scrolling. Anyways, okay, but, oh goodness. Because we would have people say, we can't find it. We can't find it. I tried to have it organized, but by putting it all in one location, a nice thing is that if it's an EPUB, you can use a search feature and search for alt text or whatever it is you want to find. And you don't have to make sure you have the correct document open, because there's one. Another thing that's nice is I'm able to do a lot of cross references. And so instead of defining, again, what do you need for a form field radio button in this software, this one, whatever. Anyways, cross references were great. So I didn't have to keep explaining the same thing or update it in one place and go, ooh, it's updated. Oh, wait, I have to update it in 5 places. Okay, anyways. Do you have another reason?
No. You want to scroll down and just kind of show what's in our handbook?
So our first unit is about kind of working with, from like a business side of things. Our department is called School Accessibility.
Sally. For School Alley.
Ooh.
We think we're clever.
Backronym. Okay, anyways, and numeronym. Okay, but here, I can show you if you are curious. If you're like, why Sally? No, meet our team. And so we often abbreviate school accessibility as Sally. S stands for school. ALLY is a numeronym for accessibility, which has 11 letters in between the first A and the Y. Hence Sally. And then, okay, that's it. Okay, anyways, so with this, yes, we have our, so different things. So how to engage with the team, how to make different kinds of requests, from us, that information, how to attend office hours, all that jazz. And then unit 2, general guides. So I cross-link a lot to these. So writing guide, I don't want to redefine how to have proper heading hierarchy in 20 different guidelines. Okay, there we go. Design, images, videos, form fields, math.
Basically things that never change depending on the medium, right? Headings are always headings. Images always need alt text. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to kind of show an example, our writing guide, chapter 5, we cover things like plain language, diction, characters, order, etc. And so if anyone really likes punctuation and wants to learn about specific punctuation characters, because who's not excited about that? I guess a lot of people aren't, but I am. Okay, anyways. Or MathML. How do we do this? Which numbers need alt text? What are the proper tags for blah, 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 blah. Okay, anyways, a lot of things. And then unit 3, digital guidelines. This is where we're working with digital only content. So largely like HTML. And so let's say it's for our, assessment. And, we maybe go over things, but when it comes to the question types, for example, I'll say like, here are the question types from which you can choose, but, it's like, if you want more information, You know, it's like, you know, they can go, missing some cross-reference links, picked a bad page, ha. But life goes on. And then also we have our last unit is about documents, where it's both print and digital use case and design, woo, all that.
So this handbook filled a huge gap for people trying to find guidelines, trying to understand, we're the person responsible for this. What do I do next? How do I learn it? So this is a great self-serve option for them to just jump to the chapter that they're working on right now.
We also have some, oh, I meant to do this one first, tutorials. And so we've started a tutorials library and we're still working on those.
Right now.
But
Chunks though. I just need to know how to do this table. There you go.
pretend the heading design is not 7 minutes and 33 seconds.
Okay, we did compromise on that one, I admit.
Yeah, I tried.
5 minutes or less.
Okay. Anyways, okay. And then also, this is now, I know earlier I had a screenshot of what the landing page used to look like. This is, now includes other things like, link for the handbook, all the different training resources, including tutorials. Oh, what's our policy? Different requests for support services, anyways, different things. But basically, this is our hub, and we link to all the things from here. And so if people want to only bookmark one URL for accessibility, this is it. So that is, I don't know, helped. Yes. Okay, let me go back to PowerPoint. Okay.
Just quickly, I know she didn't really talk about it much, but the first one up there is office hours. That has been phenomenal because, as I mentioned, different programs are in different stages, different teams doing different things. And so sometimes we might have a live training and it doesn't apply to everyone at that moment. So whatever they're working on, they've gone to the guidelines, they've looked at the tutorial, they still have questions. They pop into our office hours, which are twice a week for an hour each, and get their question answered just like that. And you would be amazed. We often run out of time in those office hours because there's so many people coming in.
It's very also helpful as a neurodivergent individual if you didn't guess with my box of ears. Anyways, okay. But that asynchronous communication is very difficult for me. So office hours has made it great. I'm available. Come, ask questions. We can go back and forth. I'm not in the black hole of my email inbox anymore.
That is right. They have a consistent place to ask their questions. All right, let's move on. So we've established our policy. This is what we will do. This is who will do it. You are now trained up or have ongoing opportunities for training to be able to be successful in that governance role. But the process is messy. We're not quite sure where to go, what to do, how to do it. What's that workflow? It's just kind of scattered. And earlier, Megan talked about, we used Excel sheets for our audit reports. We did, but we also used SharePoint, and we also used Smartsheet, and we also used, it just went, the list, it was like 5 or 6 tools. It was ridiculous. And so luckily, I did have a bit more authority and got us into Jira. So we went down to one tool, and we're able to establish a very clear testing request process. And part of my proposal was to increase the staffing of my team. Again, kudos to McGraw-Hill. They recognized the need and they did that. So we also do internal audits as things are being built, and then also do vendor audits. And that's all done through that same process and that same workflow. And then we also created early engagement, because I'm sure you all have never heard this. This is new. You've never heard this. We'll just do it at the end. Right? That's new. Nobody's ever heard it. We'll just do it at the end. Ugh. I hope you all know I'm being sarcastic. So we kind of defined out where do you need to engage with us in the earlier stages. So we worked with product management. When you're defining your product requirements for your next edition, accessibility is going to be a part of that. When you're determining your resource and cost estimations for that new edition, accessibility is going to be a part of that. I created a content estimation template that showed this is how much it'll cost to audit this many pages that are this complex, and gave them a formula that they could use to plug into their other fancy spreadsheets that they use. And then again, we really strongly encourage that self-serve of the handbook, the tutorials, to get themselves prepped. And if they're still not ready, then they can request live training from Megan saying, we're going to kick off this project, but I need live training. So they will do that. And she'll give them the live training so they're ready on kickoff day. And then throughout that early prototyping manuscript writing stage of something brand new, they also can engage with us through what we call our SAS request, which stands for School Accessibility Support Services.
Originally, Accessibility Support Services. Uh-oh.
Yeah, just take
What
out
is
that S.
acronym?
Oops. So we added school to the front. Thank goodness we're from school, so that made sense. So the SAS request comes in. It's really easy. It's like a form they fill out. It shows up on a dashboard for our specialists. They're like, got it. And then they fulfill that request, whatever that request may be. Yeah, so they get their prototypes reviewed. They get their manuscripts reviewed so that by the time they build, it's already had accessibility forethought. And then we go to the next oh so lovely diagram. Nobody's expected to read that diagram. Sorry. I know it's a lot. And just so you know, I don't deliver this in this way. This is how my brain thinks, but I also deliver it in text form and in bullets and tables and a variety of different ways. But essentially, the whole workflow from I need to request an internal audit, I got the results, I need to fix the results, who's responsible for that? Now I need to send it back to retest and keep doing that loop until it's good. And then we do the same thing with our vendor. Because I'm sure all of you are also aware that no two testers are always going to find the exact same things. And we do have members of our team with disabilities who use assistive technology, but there's other ways to use assistive technology that our vendors use. So we make sure that it goes through the same cycle. After it passes internal, then it passes vendor, then we're good to go for the ACR or the VPAT authoring. On the right, it was just a zoomed in view of the bug workflow, so nothing too exciting. Okay, the last two pieces of the framework. So we've got our policy, right? We know who's doing what. They know how to do it. The processes are smooth and they work and everybody knows how to use them. But let's continue to check in. Let's measure that success. Let's make sure that we're on track and that nothing has fallen through the cracks, so that team A is doing great, but team B is floundering. So I have monthly check-ins with every VP of every portfolio and of all of the engineering leads. And then I also have other meetings. That's my day, is just meetings. But it's so important to understand what's working, what isn't. Let's double down on what is. Let's fix what isn't, so that we can continue to have smooth sailing.
Can I say, Shannon, I love working with you, and
Oh.
I'm glad you were here doing that.
Because you hate meetings.
I could not do that. That is not my skill set, and yeah.
I mean, that's why we're all here. We all have unique skill sets. And then we also document known gaps. So for example, in some of those audits, we'll say, you know what, we're not going to fix this thing for this reason, pedagogical reason, technological restriction, whatever. Here's our alternative or our accommodation so that people can still, complete the activity, maybe just in a slightly different way. It's rare, but it happens. So we document all of that as well. And last but not least, we measure the success of the program as a whole by using a maturity model. So I do use a modified version of the W3C accessibility maturity model. We only use 5 of the 7 dimensions because that's what's applicable to us. We just did another survey on that and our scores went up, so that's good. But also, you should make some milestones for yourself. When did I'm going to roll out this policy. Oh, I did it. Check that box, like Megan was saying. I'm going to complete initial training with this set of teams. Check. So just achieving those milestones helps encourage you to keep going and helps others see the impact as well. And then there's the culture shift. And that's one we all want to see, right? At the beginning, when I came, it was like, oh, accessibility, oh, I don't really want to talk to you. I don't really want to do it. I don't have the time, money, people. And now, everybody else is, not everybody, but very many people are now like leading the charge. And I don't have to push as hard as I once did. And so that is a huge culture shift. Just the sheer attendance at office hours is testament to that. And in the beginning, those roles and responsibilities, that governance was a little shaky. Not everybody really was on board. But then they saw the success of that program and they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do that. And now they're happy that they are. Yes.
Yeah, we have an online question from Joe Simpson Jr. He asked, what's been the life cycle of this framework? The last one we just saw, from build through to today, months,
good.
years, etc.
Yeah, so I started at McGraw-Hill in June of 2022. And by December, I was rolling out what I'm going to show you next, my proposal for this framework. This is what I want to accomplish, leadership people. Give me the green light, and then we'll make it happen. And then over the next year, we built up our program, our workflow, our people. So I'd say year and a half,
Yeah. I don't
beginning till
remember
now.
when
Yeah.
the policy came out, but it
It came out right at the end of 2022, so like December or very beginning of 23, January.
Yeah, and that was a difference because, you know, as I'm trying to give information on how to create accessible content, it is great when I don't have to spend the first half hour of the meeting trying to convince people that they should try and make it accessible.
Yeah, I mean,
Spend the hour talking about how to do it.
the language is, this is McGraw-Hill policy. Now let's get into the weeds. You know, it's really nice to be able to just have that backing.
Be the mean person. They don't like me.
Somebody asked me, like, do you mean like being the bad guy? I'm like, I'm not the bad guy. I'm the encourager. I'm the one who shows them what they're missing out on, right? It's not a bad guy. Go ahead. All right, so implement, and I know I'm a little bit behind schedule, but okay, thank you. Had to get buy-in, of course, on all the framework that I just put together. I had not implemented a thing yet. I just, based on all the analysis and engaging I did, that's what I thought would be successful. So now I had to come up with, because I don't know why C-suite people really love their missions and their visions. So I wrote up a mission about what are we doing and who are we serving, a vision, where are we going. Objectives change. I had a first few objectives, but once I meet those, I'm going to have a new set of objectives. And then biggest one for my leadership team was the strategy. How are you going to get there? And then I went around to everybody. I went to the C-suite. I went to every VP. I went to all the engineers. I did everybody in order to get that buy-in. And it required, here, I'll change the slide here. Actually, I can't
Just
because,
click.
you do.
I'll do it. Sorry.
Technological person, meeting person. Oh, okay, well, you can just pass by that. That was our mission, become the leader in EdTech. That was our vision, empower our students and teachers, everybody. Next. Nope, okay, yep. Objective was, and this was key to my strategy, which is on the next one. We're gonna start building, to anything you're building new from this point on, is gonna be starting with that early engagement and all of that we talked about. And we're gonna get audits, at least so we know where we are. Like I said in the beginning, we didn't know where we were. Of all of our strategic, and the VPs decided what was strategic, in market product stuff that's already out there in the wild. Let's find out how good or bad it is. And then we're gonna remediate any critical issues found in those audits. So next one, I am a fan of alliteration, as Megan well knows. And so I created a strategy to make it easy for everybody to remember of roadmap regular, meaning anything from this date forward is going to be made accessible and it's going to have an ACR at the date of release. The end. Pivotal projects. Those are those in-market strategic ones. We're going to get an audit. We're going to get an ACR because in some states they require the ACR to move forward in the sales cycle, even if it's not a good-looking one. They just ask for the ACR. And then we're going to decide how much of that we're going to remediate or not if we're building a new version and instead put our efforts there. So that's conversations to be had. And then remediation required is very special cases. If there's a specific district who has a very specific need and they're paying a lot of, then we might make some concessions. So for example, one district, we gave them a stripped down custom version of a course, didn't have all the bells and whistles, but we were able to make that core as fully accessible for them, and they were fine not having the bells and whistles. So things like that in very strategic circumstances we would do. And then we rolled it out. And like I said, I went around, I talked to everybody. They said, change this, change that. I don't like this, I don't like that. The framework you saw was the final, but there were other iterations before that. So that's what that loop on the slide is for, that it went around and around and around until they agreed, approved, set a date for the rollout, which was early 2023. So there's a summary slide up here. It's also in the slide deck that you all have access to. I'm not going to read it. It's everything I just talked about, but if you wanted it in table form, there you go. Quick and easy glance at the framework as a whole.
Awesome.
Workshop time. I'm only 6 minutes over. No, I'm a little more than 6 minutes. Sorry.
Well, you did a fantastic job. All right, so we're going to go ahead and begin our workshop. So to begin is, yes. Is there anyone who does not have a handout and would like one? Yay! I wasn't up at like 2 a.m. printing these. Okay, anyways. Oh, you, perfect. Okay, and then also, if anyone would like a digital copy, I have the QR code here. And so if you would like to use this and the password, you can download that. Would anyone like the QR code? And go ahead and just pass this around as needed. Yes, okay, cool. So now we can begin. Okay. So I want to just start with a group discussion here. Slide 48, sorry. All right. So in the handout, if you have this, if you refer to the sections customer statements, company feedback, digitally, this table of contents is interactive. So if you select, it'll take you right there. Or flip the page if you have a paper thing. Okay, cool. And we're gonna just go over some examples of customer statements that, you know, we might hear. So for example, we want to ensure that anyone with disabilities has access to and can use all electronic information. That is great. Sometimes they're very generic and, you know, it's there, or it's, we need your VPAT. No, technically you need our ACR. That's why I don't have that rule. I would offend many people. Okay.
And just to note, everything she's going through here are legitimate, real things that our customers have sent us. There's a question.
This online question from Joe Simpson Jr. He said, what does ACR stand for?
Accessibility Conformance Report.
Okay.
So VPAT stands for Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. Granted, a lot of times accessibility folks do a very, very bad job at naming things and whatnot. But basically, the name of this form before you fill it out is a VPAT. Once you fill it out, it is no longer a VPAT. It is an ACR. So a VPAT is blank. So if they want a VPAT, oh, here you go. Anyways, but neurodivergent, did I mention that?
I get it. Okay. Me too. I'm like, another question. Please share the QR code with online folks or send a link.
100%. There is a link in the meeting chat. If you scroll up toward the beginning,
Then after they might not have it, could you? Oh, she just
Oh.
resent it.
you're wonderful.
Yes, there you go.
Also send the password with it. Thank you so much. Sorry about the password. It forced us. I'm very sorry. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Maybe customer statements. Do you comply with the ADA or Section 508 or A11Y? Originally, for like years, I thought A11Y was the name of a legislation. So that's why I like to define it for people. Moving on. Okay. And then, is this appropriate for a school for the deaf? Does text-to-speech read math equations properly, etc. Are PDFs accessible? All right, company feedback that we're getting. And as Shannon discussed, there is often a very wide range of knowledge. And these are things we covered before of some, you know, challenges, like what things that people are facing. And we were just wondering, how about your customers? For your organization, have you heard like feedback directly or indirectly from customers? What are they asking?
Client, yes or no?
I love that. That yes or no checkbox and no explanation allowed.
No
Ugh.
explanation.
Oh, the best is when I definitely had an RFP request. Oh, I wish I could remember what it was. But the way they asked the question, they clearly didn't understand accessibility. Where like, do you have closed captions for all your images? Something like that. And I'm like, no, we don't. We shouldn't.
Oh, they're not accessible. No,
Yes.
you just didn't ask the right question. But we would never say that in real life, of course.
Oh, she wouldn't.
I wouldn't. No, she might.
Any other examples? What a customer needs? That is all good. Sometimes, you know, certain with your organization, maybe media, videos. Where are the videos? Where are the videos? Maybe you want to focus a little more on video accessibility because that is selling point for you or focal point. Anyways, what does your organization need? Or where are existing gaps and challenges in your organization?
Internal analysis and engagement. From your own perspective, what do you think the answers might be? It's a starting point when you go back.
So, like I said, I work at a university and we're working on compliance. And one of the main focuses that we are focusing on is faculty coursework and making sure that that is compliant. And so that would be an internal thing that we would all have to get on board. I really like the idea of doing the office hours and having them be able to check in if for specific questions, because coursework is very different based on the subject. So that's what we're doing internally.
Awesome. Cool. And this, just trying to get you to think of for your organization, what are the gaps? What do our customers want? Because we will move on to our group activity. Okay, in this handout, if you refer to audit report on page 3 or heading level 2, whatever it is, anyways, and if you have a color version, it's orange because I like to color code my headings like the rainbow. Obviously, I have to skip yellow for color contrast, but because sometimes I'm like, is that an H3 or H4? I can't tell. It's like the size difference. And I'm like, oh, rainbow order. Anyways, but never mind. I'm done. Moving on. Okay. But with that, we wanted to just kind of give an example of an audit report. Granted, this is going to be a lot smaller, a little more simplified version.
Tiny, it doesn't really, yeah.
Yes, it is tiny. You will not be able to fully see these screenshots, but just some examples of things that may be on an audit report would be your images lack alt text. And there we have a photo showing we have a younger person who is in a wheelchair. There is another person standing kind of beside him up. I don't know, a little hard to see on this. All right, another one. You have images of text. You have an infographic. There's some text that doesn't need to be part of the image. It is part of the image. Uh-oh. All right, heading tags do not match structure on the page. And so this page shows just part of a web page where we have heading hierarchy that does not make any sense conceptually. Also, there are whatever issues, okay. Or link text doesn't describe destination. Click here, learn more. You've seen it all, okay. Text contrast, is that too low? Your table doesn't have header cells. Your form fields don't have labels that someone using assistive technology can read. Or we have some tags missing for lists. Anyways, with this report, think through with your organization what's important to you, because when you're coming up with your plan, how will I address this? You want to determine, what do I think is the most critical, maybe from a sense of a barrier to users, most critical, but also for your organization. If videos are a big thing, maybe you're going to zoom in on the video stuff and, you know, focus on that. So that can change how you prioritize it. With some of these issues, or perhaps all of them, what are ways you could go about addressing these if this is just kind of representative of some issues of some of your content.
And think back to what you've seen today, right? So you're going to be looking at what do our customers need? What is our internal teams lacking or not lacking in order to achieve the fix, to do the fix? Just think about all of the different levels of work that has to go into fixing alt text on an image, and come up with a plan for your org. You can type it if you're on a computer, whatever you want to do, or you can just share with us out loud, whatever you would like.
If you would like to see when we build up this little mini audit report,
We
this is
created a
web-
really bad website.
Yes. So the beginning of Craigen, also known as Craig, created this just as an example website where a lot of things were not done well. So anyways, on purpose as a learning example. So if this helps, here it is. And the link to this website is there in this document if anyone's accessing it digitally. It says accessibility test web page for the link text.
Start. What's the first thing you would do if you got this audit report? You're determining, okay, this is our product and this is the report we got, and we need to figure out our next step. Where would you start? Yes. Oh, I thought your hand was up. Sorry. Okay, there's one over here.
I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but this is the approach we've taken with teams is what are kind of the key user flows and how important are they? So it's not necessarily just about alt text or something like that, but if there's a key flow that the user needs that isn't accessible today, how do we fix it? That's kind of been our, it depends on the scenario, but what is the, I won't bore you like I did some of the groups in an earlier meeting today, but if there's a key flow that is broke and it's going to really aggravate the customer really quickly if we don't fix it, or if it's a new product, if we can just fix it, that's kind of been the approach that I've kind of espoused for some of our dev teams and stuff.
Yeah, that's really, really good. One of the ways I kind of reference that as well is pervasiveness, at least in our curriculum. How pervasive is this issue? Yeah. And there are other, if you're a website that sells something. So I would assume you want to focus on those user flows of the landing page and the search, like the top searches and the checkout. I don't know. Focus on those three areas first. And then which teams are responsible for fixing it on those pages? Do they know what to do? So that's part of that framework that you have in place. Yeah, go ahead.
That's actually going someplace where I was going with roles and responsibilities. And I try to be nicer about it, but whose fault is it that this got into production? So
Say it in a nice way, but yep.
yeah, like is the graphic designer that picked the image responsible for the alt text, or the usability person that designed the page writing the alt text? How did the QA testers miss that? And who do I need to train to make sure this never, ever, ever happens again?
Yes, all of that.
100%. So yeah, what is the priority here? What do you need to do first? Which group do you need to focus on? Because we're not concerned of, oh, in this one particular photo of those two people outside, let's add that alt text. Yay, problem fixed. No. Who is in charge of alt text? If no one is in charge of alt text, we need people in charge. Train them, get that, and yeah, know which team. For us, are we working with designers? Are we working with developers? Are we working with our content subject matter experts? Okay, let's move on.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And why? I'm sorry.
Trying to get back to the PowerPoint. Stand by.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so then we have this as a small group activity, or you can do it on your own. But part of it is to start thinking about with your framework. Obviously, we are not saying that you will write out a full framework in 5 minutes, but you better.
Giving you 30, it just didn't quite work out that way.
Anyways, with this, we just have some questions here. So if you go to the H2, build your framework, each of these big questions, H3 heading. Okay, what is the goal of your framework? Which accessibility standards will you follow? What tools and strategies will support your implementation? And who will be responsible for each aspect of accessibility? Plan how to roll out your framework, include steps and timelines. How will you measure success? What are your metrics? For each question, we provide just some examples there. And so if right now you want to just kind of look through this a little bit, and if any of these jump out to you in terms of, ooh, I have an idea for this, feel free to jot it down or bring this home with you and later go through it.
You have your audit report up. I can't get to the next slide.
Just click.
Oh, it's already on it. Okay.
Yep, yep.
So we were going to give you more time to do that here in the room so we could walk around and answer questions. You're still welcome to stick around and do that, but we only have a few minutes left. So we wanted to do a quick recap before you go. We announced our learning outcomes in the beginning. We were hoping you would achieve these 3 things. So we would, Megan, like to read through them again and get a pulse from the room if we hit the targets.
All right. So now after this presentation, like how confident do you feel? Maybe, I don't know, should we do like raising hands? And if your hand's up really high, that's really confident. And this is like, or down if you're like, whatever you want to do. Anyways, but yeah, how confident do you feel about starting or improving your organization's framework after this session?
Afraid it was going to be like,
Yeah, it's gonna be like, stare at the floor. Okay.
worries things.
And then I am totally looking at a different page on here than up there, and that was confusing. Okay, what is the first step you plan to take in building or enhancing your accessibility program? And if anyone just has an answer and wants to share, feel free.
Call it out.
The last question's kind of the same.
Oh, wait, was there one? No?
No, I'm just pulling this.
Okay.
Or what is a takeaway from today's session?
Any big takeaways?
The whole thing, really,
Awesome.
it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. You're right.
I really appreciate seeing how you've gone from 0 to what you have now
Yeah.
and how it's such a mature framework. So awesome, awesome work.
Thank you.
I appreciate your definition of governance because I feel like it's thrown around like this, we need governance. And it's just people and who does what. I don't know why, you know what I mean? I
I
appreciate
do.
the simple definition of governance.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to comment that it gives us practical steps for people that are feeling a little overwhelmed. Because big picture wise, we have a lot to do, a lot of work to do, and this really broke it down and gave practical steps. So thanks for that.
Wonderful.
That's fantastic.
And you may have touched on it before. I tried to zoom and watch. What kind of support did you get from your management when you first proposed this? Was there any kickback or pushback?
There was a lot of questions asked. So they wanted, that's where I said, you need to have your ducks in a row and everything in your back pocket so you can answer these questions. Because there was a lot of in-depth, okay, why is this important? Where do you think we're going to get the money for this? And, you know, like those kinds of questions, because they were challenging me. I'm very blessed because my leadership understood and they listened. It wasn't just, oh, just tell me what you want. Oh, I'm not really listening, right? They truly did listen. So I know not everyone is going to be in that position. And if you want to reach out to me and we can brainstorm ideas to get your leadership more on board, I'm open to that because I have been there in other organizations before. But yeah, it was just a lot of deep questioning, and there was a lot of revisions of the framework. Like I said, this is the final, but I had other pieces that pulled out or swapped or whatever to make everybody happy.
Oh, yeah.
We did.
Texas.
Yeah, Texas. I wouldn't say lawsuits specifically, although that is becoming more of a thing. But for us, it was those adoption years, right? So Texas is saying, we're going to adopt a science program. It's going to go on a list. Anybody who makes it on the list, we're going to pay for that district to get their licenses for every kid in their district, which is huge, right? But you got to make the list. And you had to be fully accessible teacher and student to do that. So that was a huge external pressure that did help in their decision to build the team and take on the framework.
Great question. And then this last slide we have up here again is our QR code. There's a little tiny URL if you want to tip, 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 tip. This link will expire on Friday.
But our
Here's
emails
the
don't.
password. Our emails don't expire.
You can get it, so it's
I
anytime.
suggest putting both of us on the email, especially because she's way better at email. Anyways, okay. And
Okay.
then Shannon will be like, Megan, can you please respond to that email?
Yeah, but
Oh,
then I make her, like I make her do it. So